Solution for all political problems is liberty. Now you might think liberty is not a solution, it's an ideal, it's a goal, it's a destination. But the question is how to reach there, how to achieve that liberty. For that, we have to understand what is liberty. Liberty means freedom from oppression.
Now, again, what is oppression? Oppression can be understood as violation of rights. But so is injustice. Injustice can also be understood as violations of right?
Now, what is the difference between injustice and oppression? See, injustice can be unintentional, like it can be accidental. Like, for example, one person without knowledge or by error or by mistake, if he violates someone else's rights, that is injustice.
For example, if state puts an innocent person in jail and if it is merely an injustice, it will release it whenever it finds that he is an innocent person. It is reversible. Injustice is reversible. We can go back to justice if it is merely an injustice. But whereas oppression, they keep you in jail, they rot you in jail, though they know you are an innocent person, because their intention is to keep you in jail. That is oppression. So oppression means intentionally violation of rights.
But now, every day in the news, we see hundreds of political problems. We see hundreds of instances where our rights are violated. Now, I have a question to you. How much do you think all these things are intentional? Do you think our political leadership is naive, like they don't know about these problems? Do you think these problems exist because lack of their knowledge? Do you think so? If you're thinking so, I'm sorry to say this, that majority of violations of rights are intentional. Sometimes the state itself violates our rights. Sometimes the state just stand by the violators. So it is always intentional. And intentions are the directions. If their intentions are to solve the problem, they would have created systems in that direction. But that is not the case. That is not their intentions. Therefore, what we are seeing is intentional violations of rights, and they are structurally violated. And these structures of oppression is the major reason behind our current situation. Our lives are so miserable because of these structures of oppression. And this is why we are saying liberty is the solution. Because liberty is freedom from these structures of oppression. Once we get rid of this oppression, we will reach a place where our rights won't be violated. Even if any cases of injustice, we will make sure it won't repeat. And with time, we live in the garden of justice. For that, we have to dive into this discipline called political finance. Political finance is one of the disciplines of social science. However, not many students of social science are familiar with this discipline. And the reason is almost no university in India is teaching this discipline. Like political finance as a subject is not available in any university. Though this discipline is unpopular in that sense, but still I believe that this discipline has a lot of significance because you can understand the root causes for all the political problems when you look through this discipline. And not just that, you can actually solve them. Like you can formulate solutions to the current political problems through political finance. And that's why it is very, very important. And to explain political finance in simple terms,
Just like how political science focuses on understanding political systems and how psychology focuses on understanding human mind, similarly, political finance also tries to understand the role of money in politics. So, understanding the role of money is the main concern of the political finance. So first let's understand the current system, which is the private funding system. With that, we can understand the what question and the why question, like the motives behind the oppression. From that point, we can ideate a solution which is public funding system. Through that, we will understand how can we end this oppression. Now let's start our analysis with the current private funding system.
Now let's try to understand why we are calling the current system as private funding system. See, if you contest in elections, you have to spend some money, right? Now, whose money will you spend?
Either you have to spend your own private money or you have to pool money through your private connections and commitments.
Since we are spending all this money through our private capacities, we have to call the current financial system in politics as private funding system. Are we clear until this part? Okay, great. Now we all know that there is huge expenditure in politics. 30 to 40 crore rupees is what an MLA, on average basis is spending in the area where I am living in southern part of India. And you will go to north, you will have like 20 to 30, like little less, but still a big amount. And when it comes to member of parliaments, they are spending, from 60 to 70, 80, these many crores. Now, these are not small amounts, right? They are very big amounts, right? And one of the major misconception is that people are selling their votes. People are taking money for votes, and they are the reason for corrupting the democracy. But this is not completely true, right? Because there are other forms of expenditure, like for example, you have to spend money from pamphlets to campaigning. You have to spend money from posters, advertisements to meetings, and you also have to spend money on rallies, maintaining offices and cadre, and you also have to give some party fund as well because they also have to manage their own finances like IT cells, media channels, legal cells, etc. etc. So even if you remove the money that is spent on vote buying, you still have money in politics, right? Let's say you have spent 40 crore rupees and out of that 20 crore you have distributed for votes only, for buying votes only. But still you have another 20 crores for all the other expenditure, right? Like for, meetings and other expenditures. You still need money in politics. So let's just not put whole blame on people and say because of them only the politics is getting corrupted. No, let's not do that because it will not leads us to solution. You always have to have true conceptions. And let's understand private funding system for what it is. And the truth is you still need money in politics. Let's start from here.
We all think our politicians are inherently bad people. They are creatures of greed and whatnot.
I mean, we have our own reasons to think so, right? Like, because we see them doing bad things, like they do this corruption, that corruption, sand mafia, land mafia. After a point, we think, are they even humans, right? This is what we think about our politicians. We all do. But having said that, I have a question though. See, if you are spending 40 crore rupees and while contesting in elections, if I spend 40 crore rupees while contesting in elections, what will we do?
We have to earn our money back, right? Otherwise, how long can we spend? So, we have to do corruption. Because there is no other way.
See, you have to do it, I have to do it, any of us have to do it. I always believe in one thing. See, we can only critique others when we are acting differently. Like we are doing a better job, then only we can critique others. See, for example, if a father is physically abusing his child, there we can critique because we won't do it. We will be teaching things, we will be explaining things. We will be doing a better job of parenting. We won't be, physically abusing our children. There we can critique. But if we are also participating in this private funding system in politics, we have to spend our money. And if we do that, we also have to recover the money and we have to do corruption. We have to do oppression in that. So how are we different? We are also doing the same thing if we are in their shoes. So then ours won't be criticism. Ours will be envy. See, it is easy to put blame on individuals. It is easy to say that this, politician is a bad person. But the real truth is, the real problem is with the current private funding system. The system is the problem. See, if even we spend money in this system, let's say we spend 40 crores in this system, and if you don't earn the money back, what will you do for the next election? Next election you spend another 40 crores, and then next election, how long you will going to bankrupt, man, at some point. So you can't be naive and say, I will be a good person. No, you can't. The only good thing you might do is, like, if you're a good person, you will earn little less. Let's say the current politician is earning 100 crore out of corruption, you will might earn like 80 crores, 70 crores out of corruption. The rate of corruption is the only difference, but the basic act of corruption will be there, because there is no other way, right? Like, there is no other way to recover the money. The corruption is the only way. So private funding system thrives on corruption, crime, and oppression. Now let's see how this corruption going to be, because MLA has to earn a lot of money, right? He can't be doing this petty corruption like taking money under the table and saying, like a typical bureaucrat, you go, I will do your work. He can never earn crores of rupees like that. So they have to do institutional corruption. They have to use institutions, starting from policemen, bureaucrats, and other departments, to do corruption. So by doing so, they are corrupting the whole system. They are corrupting the whole political atmosphere. And the irony is, our politicians, the MLAs and MPs, they are supposed to make laws, right? They are the lawmakers. They are to make laws and preach these laws. But these very people have to violate the very laws they make. You know, this is the greatest irony, right? Like, on one hand you preach laws, and on the other hand you have to violate, and it is the necessity of the private funding system. Not just them, we also have to do that, the same thing. And that is the irony of the private funding system. Now one might think, why am I making big fuss about corruption? Like, corruption is there and we are living with it anyway. Like, what is the big deal now? See, living anyway is not living. Slaves also lived in slavery, but that's not life, right? Life means living with all our rights. We have to get everything which is rightfully ours. That is the life. And now, see, air is getting corrupted, and we are breathing that air, and our life expectancy is going down. We are supposed to live 90 years, 80 years, and now our life expectancy has gone down to 60, 50. Is it not a loss? Water is getting polluted because some politician signed, factory by taking bribe. Is it not your loss? You are getting diseases with it. Politicians are destroying public education, public health by taking some bribe, for private interests. Is it not your loss? Someone is giving bribe and taking away your opportunities, like, and we are living with this, like, with these compromises. Is it not your loss? Corruption, any form of corruption, comes with a cost, and that cost is our rights. They are doing it because they have to earn the money, and they have to earn the money only through corruption. But we are in the receiving end. I mean, if you don't see it as a big problem, then I don't know who can save you, because corruption, oppression, crime, these are the different names of the same monster. And that monster, we have to kill it. Otherwise, it will kill us. If not for once, it will kill us eventually. We have seen how corruption is necessity in private funding system. Now let's understand the reasons behind the current political behavior. See, we always critique, politicians for their behavior, right? Like, they abuse each other, they fight in parliaments and assemblies, they don't maintain proper public decorum. And there are reasons for it. So, okay, we've seen how, they do, the corruption is necessity. Like, if you put money and if you win, you have to recover the money, and corruption is necessity. But let's talk about the other side of the story. Okay, you contested in elections and you spend 40 crores. But what if you lose in elections? It's not merely a defeat, right? You're going to lose your money. Like all your money will be gone. And it is a suicidal thing. Like losing money elections after elections, it's a suicide, financial suicide. Okay, if you are rich, you can stand for 2, 3 elections. But continuously losing money in private funding system is a suicide. And that's why we see, in this panchayat elections, people commit suicides. And even in MLAs also, sometimes if they lose money, they will put IP and run away to another constituency or another area. These are the things we see. Even the politicians are also victims of private funding system. And this system is equals to that of gambling. Like in gambling, if you win money, you are a hero, you will get cheers, you will get money, life is good. But what if you lose? If you lose, you will be doomed. You lose all your money and it's a suicide. Losing in elections is suicidal in private funding system. Therefore, victory becomes the survival formula in private funding system. You have to win at any cost. Winning will be the compulsion for all the politicians. Like they put their money and they have to win at any cost. And they have to do whatever it takes. They're compelled to do that. So no matter how good person you are, once you put your money, you have to get that victory. It's almost like war only. The only way to survive in war is winning. If you lose, you die. So you have to win at any cost, and for that you have to stoop so down. If it is necessary, you will stoop. That is the only way to survive. See, they say everything is fair in love and war, right? Same applies here as well. In private funding system, everything is fair in politics as well. They, you have to do, like you have to abuse others in order to win, you have to do that. And if someone says you have to spread rumors on your opponent, you have to do that. You will do that. That's why we have this chaos. People are abusing each other, people are spreading rumors, people are threatening each other. All this drama is because of the compulsions. These are the reasons why the people are behaving like this. See, in our childhood or even in our youth days as well, while playing cricket, normally we play like in all fairness, like if we get out, okay, we'll accept it and say okay, I am out. But in bet matches, when you put lot of money like 10,000, 20,000 bet, people start lying. Even if they got edged, they say no, there is no edge, there is no edge. So there used to be this disputes in cricket match. The reason I'm saying is when money is at risk, you slowly start losing your personality. You'll start lying, you'll start doing every bad thing to earn your money back in this private funding system. Now let's understand how people are getting compromised in this private funding system. Let's say I want to vote for a party, which is good party, but the problem is it is very small party. And if I say this thing to people, they simply laugh at me. They say like, are you mad or what? Like, will you vote for a losing party? Like, who will vote for it? uh, they think you always have to vote for winning cause, like otherwise it will be wastage of vote. What is the point of voting then? So you always have to vote for winning party, though it is bad. So if you think this party is bad, vote for that party. That party is bad, vote for this party. This is how our democracies are functioning. Voting for the lesser evil, they say. So we are voting for a bad party simply because it has winning chances. We feel okay, it is not bad than that, but still there is compromises, right? We are not voting with hope that this will do justice for everyone. No, we all know that whichever party you vote, they were going to do oppression on some people or the other, and we are voting with this compromises. And how can we compromise on such an important thing in democracy, which is voting? But nevertheless, we are doing it. And choosing this lesser evil is also a relative thing. Let's say, like if one thief is doing robbery in my house, I feel he is the bigger thief, and another thief is doing robbery in my neighbor's house. He feels the thief who is doing robbery in his house is a bigger thief, and we can never agree on who is bigger thief because we always think on about ourselves, right? So people will start becoming selfish, and they will only opt selective justice where they are covered. But this is not how justice is. Like, justice should be like rainwater, like it should fall on everyone equally. But now, today, justice is like that well in our private compound. Like, we only getting access, and that's what we are choosing. But as I said, like in this selective justice, in this regime, if we are safe, our neighbor will be at risk. In next regime, he will be safe and we are at risk. We can't afford to play this game, right? We can't afford to, put our justice at risk. We have to get universal justice, but that is not possible in this private funding system, because in private funding system people have to do oppression, because that's how they make money. If they have to do some form of oppression, if at least some, they have to violate some rights. So achieving complete justice, achieving universal justice is impossible in private funding system. So previously, for the sake of thought experiment, we thought like if we spend 40 crores, even we have to do corruption because that is the only way to get the money back, right? But now let's go one step behind and think, like, do we have that much amount of money in the first place? Like, do we have 40 crores? Like, can we spend that much money? And my answer is no, I can't spend. And I'm sure your answer is also no, because 99% of people doesn't have that much amount of money, right? 40 crores is not a small amount, and that is only for a constituency level, MLA level expenditure. For running a whole party, you need thousands of crores, and there is no question of us spending that amount of money. And if you don't spend, you can't win in these elections. I'm not saying you cannot file a nomination, that you can do, but filing nomination is not winning, right? Like, for to win, to be in that competition, you need to spend this much amount of money, and without that money you can never win. So so in this system, only rich can participate in the true sense, or people who have the support of rich people can participate and have that chance to get victory. Others, we can nominally participate, but that is of no use. See, this reminds me of one thing. Like in monarchy, a king will be there, and king have children, let's say 20 children. And after king, one of the children will rule. That is the concept of monarchy, right? So here also, let's say, a constituency have 2 lakh people population, and within 2 lakhs, how many people have like a capacity to spend 40 crores? I think, barely 20-30 families. So only they can achieve the power. So if you draw some parallels between monarchy and democracy, the power is never reached the people, like, in the true sense. Here in democracy, you have this, right to question the government, you have that right, this right. But to, get into that power, you're equally, alienated. You can never reach without money. Uh, so that is the hard reality of private funding system. See, the inequalities in economics will transcend into politics within private funding system. Your economic status will determine your political participation. Not only that, but also your political influence over political parties. See, if I give 10,000 rupees to political parties as a fund, that is my influence. And if a rich person gives 10 crore rupees, that is his influence. And I can never match his influence because that is his range and that is his economic status. So, as I said, the inequalities will transcend. The inequalities of economics will transcend into politics. Therefore, we have unequal political statuses. And on the other side, the poor people live about giving funds. They will take money in return because they know that anyway the political class will do corruption and they earn their money. Let me just bargain some amount in that. That's how they think, and they will get whatever they get through that bargaining. But as a result, they also get the negative influence because they're taking money, right? So they have a negative influence. They come bottom in the priority list. See, I'll tell you how it works. The influence will also translate into representation as well. So if rich person gives 10 crore rupees and I give 10,000 rupees, and if I and that rich person ever get into conflict, they'll obviously take sides with rich people. No matter whether the justice is on his side or not, they will side with the rich person. And they will always prioritize based on the financial relations. They will prioritize first rich person and then middle class, and then they will not even worry about the existence of the poor people. I'm not saying they will give some welfare schemes, this and that, but individually speaking, they don't care if they even die also, because that's how the financial relation works. And therefore there is huge inequality within this private funding system. And people think that after universal adult franchise we have equality because everyone has vote, so everyone is equal. Yeah, voting rights gave us some amount of equality, I agree, but that is nominal equality. We are on voting, you are equal. While filing nomination, you are equal. Or on voting day, on standing in line and voting, you are equal. But that's it. Only on nominal level you are equal. Only on voting day you are equal. On the other occasions, for spending, money, for giving funds, for starting party, for campaigning, you name any occasion, you are unequal. On every other occasion, you are unequal. We are unequals in this system, and we have to accept it. We can't just live in this dreamy world. The private funding system, our economic status will be will translate into political status, and that is an unequal status. That is the reality. And and this is not just, the rate of inequality is not also small, it is very huge. I will tell you how. Imagine there is a common balance. On one side you have Ambani, who can give 10,000 crores to a political party. On the other side you have like commoners like you and me, who can max give 10,000, 20,000. See, to match his 10,000 crores, how many of us has to stand in this side of a common balance to match his influence? Do simple math, like 10,000 crore by 10,000 is equal to crore. That means crore people like us has to stand in this side of common balance to weigh equally with that of Ambani or Adani or any other billionaire. And do you imagine, one person influence is equal to that of crore people? Isn't it insane? Like, how in the world can this much of inequality exist and we can call this system as democratic? Is this democracy? It's not, right? And but it's also reality to accept, that this much amount of inequality exists. And if you understand this, you can easily understand every other thing. Like you always wonder why this political party is evacuating whole forest. People who are living in the tandas, they are displacing these people and sending to somewhere else for one industrialist, for one billionaire. You'll understand now, because their influence is equal to that of crore people. So they will displace crores of people for to securing the interests of the rich. That is how finance work. And that's why the political parties give all the contracts to rich people. All they leak secrets to rich people, because that's how the financial relations are in private funding system. And I'm telling you, you cannot reform the private funding system. No, you can't. Because like these influences can't be reformed. Once you allow the money, private money, they have to they have to, they will expect returns, and as a result there will be inequality, and as a result there will be oppression in the system, and it will not stop with us. It will pass on to the next generations. Our next generation has to suffer in this system if we don't end this oppression with us. See, today people of my age won't worry about the next generation because they don't have children of their own. But I'm telling you, the day your first born child born, your whole concern will be about them only, because they will be us, right? Like, they are will be our future. And if you don't solve these problems, they will suffer a lot more than us, because we haven't seen the worst conditions of private funding system yet. The future will be even worse with private funding system. So we have to solve this private funding system. We have to end this private funding system in our lifetime, so that our children will live peacefully and securely with all their rights in justice. Once we dismantle the private funding system, the next thing is we have to replace it with a better system, a public funding system, which is our solution for the question we are chasing: how to end this oppression. Now, what is public funding system? Since we thought spending our own private money can be understood as private funding system, similarly one might think public funding system is about, collecting money from the people, from all the public. But that is not the idea behind the public funding system. To explain you what we meant, I will ask you this simple question: what is the difference between a public institution and a private institution? See, if money to run an institution is coming from private ownership, like salaries and other expenditures, is coming from private owner, then that institution is understood as private institution. Similarly, if money is coming from government, that institutions can be understood as public institutions. The example for private institutions are private school, private hospital, etc. etc. Same goes with public institutions as well. The examples are public school, public hospital. You all know. So similarly, the idea of public funding system is financing the political parties through state, through government money. So political parties can be public institutions and they can finally serve public. Now one might think, though it is good to imagine these political parties as public institutions, but in reality that might not be possible, because political parties are fundamentally different from other public institutions, right? For example, if you take a given area, like, only there can be one police station, one fire station, one collector office, or certain number of schools, certain number of public hospitals. So if you have certain number, it is easy to finance. Whereas political parties, there can be many in number. Many people can file nomination. So if there is no certainty in number of institutions that going to be exist, how can you finance such a thing? How can you finance with government? That can be a challenge. But so the idea of public funding system is that we're going to give funds to political parties based on the votes they secure in elections. So we're going to give funds based on the proportion of votes they receive in the elections. For example, let's say there is a constituency and we allocated 1 crore rupee fixed fund for political parties within the constituency. And we have 5 parties in this constituency. So the first party secured, let's say, 50% of votes. Therefore, we're going to give 50% fund, like 50 lakhs to that party. And second party secured 30%. So we give 30 lakhs to that party. and third party received 20 percentage of votes. Therefore, we give 20 lakh rupees to this party. And the fourth party, fifth party, unfortunately couldn't able to secure any votes. So we don't going to give any fund because they don't have any votes. So through this mechanism, we can effectively finance political parties no matter how many number they are with fixed amount of fund. Therefore, we can effectively finance political parties within the public funding system. Now, though this voting formula have solved the distribution problem, but still it is leading us to other problems. I'll tell you how. See, we are saying that funds should be proportional to the votes, right? Now, you can only know these voting results after the elections, but we have to fund the campaigning which takes before elections. Now, how can you fund this campaigning on basis of voting results which comes after the elections? Now, how can you fund something which is based in the future? Like, how can you do that? It's simply not possible. You have to do time travel for it, and it's not possible. So, giving funds based on votes is a paradox, a temporal paradox. How can we do that? And this is why the current public funding system is saying that we have to give funds to these political parties for the current elections campaignings based on the results of the previous elections. So we're going to give funds based on the previous election results, the voting results. Based on this, we're going to give funds to the current election campaigning. And to explain you even in simpler words, like for 2029 election campaigning, we're going to give funds based on the results of 2024 election results. So this is doable, right? Like we can always access the past data. For this, we don't need to do time travel. And this is how we can practically finance political parties based on the votes. Now, though this formula is practical and doable, many might find a problem in financing the current election campaigning based on the results of the previous election, because they might think there is huge gap right in between this election and the previous election, 5 years gap, and a lot of things might change. Though we have voted for those political parties in the past, with a hope that they will do good, but what if they don't do good? And after 5 years you are saying that you're going to give funds based on the previous election voting results. That's not fair. Because you're not taking the current sentiment might be different to the previous election results, right? So how can it can be fair? And if we're going to give funds based on the previous election results, it invariably gives advantageous positions to the incumbent or ruling parties or the big parties, because that's how they became big parties in the first place, right? By getting a lot of votes. And if you take that votes into consideration for giving funds, again you're giving a lot of funds and they'll do a lot of campaigning so that they get a lot of votes again. So this is going to be a big loop where you have more votes, then you have more funds, and if you have more funds you will get more votes. So this is going to be a unending loop. So though public funding system is intended to bring that level playing field, but in reality it is moving in the opposite direction. And for these reasons, public funding system have died in all over the world. Like no country has fully adopted this system. It is partially or coexisting with private funding system in some European countries. But apart from that, it is not fully existing in any country. Having said that, though the reasons, the problems what we have discussed have some validity, but I believe, see, these are not the problems of public funding system. These are the problems of our current understanding on democracy. What is democracy? Is democracy just about elections and campaigning or what? If it is so, that is very narrow understanding on democracy. If you reduce democracy just to elections and campaigning, which comes once in 5 years, that's very bad. See, It's not just about what happens at the time of elections. Democracy is about what happens in between elections also. Politics in democracy should be about continuous political labor. This should be our conception of democracy, continuous political labor. Now, what do I mean by this continuous political labor? I'll discuss everything in detail in the next segment. But let's just take this notion, the continuous political labor, and let's see how it's going to solve the problems that we have discussed before, like the inequality loop and also the gap. Now, we are saying giving funds to this election campaigning based on the previous election results is unfair because there is 5 years gap and people might change, sentiments might change, so it's not fair. Now, since we said, politics should be continuous political labor, we are not giving whole fund only just for campaigning. We are going to give the fund on every month basis. Therefore, people know while they are voting that this fund, whatever vote I give, it will be converted into fund, and from the day one. And so for every month the votes going to receive, and people will vote with that consciousness. Therefore, there will be no gap. See, if we only give funds only at the time of campaigning based on the previous election, there is obviously gap, and but if you're giving from first month, this election will be a starting point, and people will be aware of it, and they will vote accordingly. And you might say that though you give funds on every month basis, but still they are unequal funds, right? Big party will get more funds, small party will get less funds. So how do you solve the problem of inequality then? Now, see, inequality will be there, but if you are only giving these funds to campaigning, that inequality will be uncontestable. Whereas if you give this unequal funds to political labor, here we can contest it. Now, first let's understand what is the difference between campaigning and the labor, like or political labor. See, campaigning is just about speeches, promises, narratives, all this, what we call visibility race. Like whoever, make more speeches, put a lot of meetings, and like do these larger narratives, they will win this race. Here, money will be directly proportional to your victory. Like if you have more money, you will do more campaigning, therefore you will get more visibility, therefore you have higher chances of visibility, victory. So the inequality will be absolute. It's like, like race. Like if you have a 1 crore rupees car, and if I have, let's say 10 lakh rupees car, you going to win every time because it's a race. There will be, it is like that. Like giving fund only for campaigning will be like that. And it's also very hard, to judge campaigns for people, because they have to judge promises, they have to judge on on speeches. It will be very hard in comparison to labor. Whereas labor, see, if they experience some work, they can easily judge. Therefore, what I'm trying to say is that even if you give unequal funds to political labor, they will still experience the labor throughout 5 years, and based on that, they will be in a good position to vote. It's like for example, let's say if there is a good movie, like high budget film and low budget film. So if it is only about promotions, money will be directly proportional here. So a big budget film always wins the visibility race, always have a bigger hype. But once the film is released, it is in theater, if it is not doing good, there it is easy to judge. There people, if it is bad, they might give more revenue to the small film if it is good. So that's what I'm trying to say. Political labor, it is easy to judge. And here the inequality can be contested. And also, if small parties do good, let's say 5%, a small party got 5% votes, therefore only 5% or 5 lakh rupees fund in a constituency. If they do good, next time 3-4% will get add up, and it will incrementally grow. And if the big parties don't do good, they incrementally get less. And it's also like people will also judge, like if you give a lot of fund to one party, and if they're not doing good, they will hate more because they know they are getting a lot of fund, and they're still not working as they have to work. So that's what I'm saying. The concept of judgment will increase radically in if it is labor. If it is campaigning, it will be chaos and people will fall for it, and therefore the inequality problem will be absolute. But here it can be contested, and it will be contested at a great amount, not just mere contestation. So I believe continuous political labor can solve these problems, and it can lead democracy towards a constructive growth where parties will grow incrementally if they do good job. Now let's look into this idea of political labor that we are keep referring so far. Let's look into in detail. Now, for that, we have to, imagine a scenario. So, let's say we are giving 1 crore rupee fund for every constituency, as part of public funding system, we allocated fixed fund. And let's say in one, constituency, one party got 50% vote share. Okay. Now we are saying funds are proportional to the votes, right? So accordingly, we are giving 50 lakhs to this party. And if some party secured 30%, then they'll get 30 lakhs. If some party secured 5%, they secure 5 lakhs. And if they don't get any vote, they don't get any fund. You all know this basic concept. Now, we are not going to give this 50 lakhs to only one single person, and that's not what we are going to do. So what we'll ask is that we'll ask political parties to come up with the list of cadre, let's say 200 people. Okay. And this party got 50% vote share, right? So we select first 50 percentage of cadre, that is 100 people, and we'll give this 50 lakhs in the form of salaries, like each person get 50,000 every month. So this is how we are going to distribute funds in public funding system. The majority of fund will be distributed to party cadre in the form of salaries, and some minute fund will be allocated for the expenses. But public funding system is essentially about giving salaries to the cadre, so that giving salaries to the cadre so that they will do political labor. Now, what is this political labor? Now, okay, they will take these salaries on monthly basis and they will work like any other people. But what kind of work they do? For that, we have to understand the very concept of politics. Because I think this concept of politics is been most inappropriated, like distorted concept because of various reasons. Let's not go into that, but let's understand what is politics. See, politics comprises of two things. First one is about understanding what is happening. Without understanding the reality, what is happening, how can you govern? So you have to understand what is the current conditions, what are the current affairs, what are the current conditions of the schools, hospitals, of people lives, so on and so forth. So this question is very important. And if something is not good with what is currently happening, if what is happening is not good, then we have to prescribe how it should happen. How it should happen. We can only say something is bad if we have an ideal case, right? So it should happen like this, but it's not happening like this. So if something is not good, we always have to think about how it should happen. So what question kind of reveals reality, and understanding reality is very, very important for governance. And this how question prompts the ideal world. Ideally how it should happen. If something is bad, ideally how it should happen. Now, the the process of understanding reality, we can call it as monitoring. So this is the first task, what we are referring as political labor. And through monitoring, we can understand the reality. From there, if something is bad, we have to reach to this ideal world, right? For that, we have to do policy making. these two things are what politics are really about: monitoring and policy making. This is what politics is about. Politics is not about just giving speeches, doing this rhetoric speeches or the campaigning, all this media theatrics or, running narratives. All this is nonsense. Real politics is about monitoring, first of all, to understand the reality. On top of it, if something is bad, or, we have to do policy making to reach that ideal stage. So this is what politics is all about. Now, why do we, how do we do monitoring in this public funding system? Let's understand this. So we are saying, in public funding system, we are giving salaries to the cadre, right? Now let's imagine that I am a part of a party and you are also part of party with, let's say our party got 5% of vote. So we got, let's say 5 lakh rupees. So we have like having 10 people or 9 people. Okay. Each of us are getting 50,000 rupees as a salary and we have to work and remaining office expenses. So this is what we have. So this 10 people, or 9 people, each of us will take, will be allocated, assigned an area of governance. Let's say I take education, someone take healthcare, someone roads and other transporting, someone will market conditions, someone will take housing conditions, so on and so forth. So each will be assigned an area of governance. So our job is to first of all monitor our area of governance. Okay, so my job, as a person who's a cadre, working in the ground level, in the education department, my job is to do monitoring of every school. Like, that's my job. Like, I have to monitor every school, like day in day out. Every day I have to visit a school and I have to monitor. Now what do we mean by monitoring? So we have to do monitoring properly. Oh, sorry, my okay, it's fine. So we have to do monitoring appropriately. Okay, so let's say with all the monitoring points, let's say if I have to visit a school, what should I look for? I have to look for infrastructure, I have to look for, conditions like classroom conditions, whether they have proper benches or not, blackboard is appropriate or not, like what are the washroom facilities, what are the like teacher student relations, is the pedagogy is good, or children are afraid of teachers to ask even questions. Those conditions, in that dimension we have to monitor. We also have to monitor about the social aspects, like, if children are dropping out from government schools, what are the reasons behind that? And if, in private schools, what is the fee structures, whether the children are capable, like the parents of the children are capable paying, or is it putting additional pressure? What are the salaries of the private teachers? All these aspects we have to monitor from every aspect, because all these things are matters. And if we note down all these monitoring points, every field will have at least, 400 or 500 questionnaire sheet. And, if we and with this sheet, if we, like, let's say in our constituency, let's say we have 100 schools, and if we monitor each school with this 400 500 monitoring points, we'll have data of that accuracy. Like, you will understand everything about each school, and we'll do it for all 100 schools. And imagine the amount of data we have by the end of 3 4 months. Like, and we are going to do it again and again and see how it is incrementally improving or decreasing. So first of all, imagine the amount of data we can collect, and this data will unfold the reality. you know this is how we can understand the reality. And this is very, very, very important. Monitoring in this formal sense is very important. And you can ask, for this monitoring, why, why are we, like, we have to do in this way, like, can't we informally do monitoring? Can't we informally inquire the conditions about the, like these institutions. Can't we do that? We'll come back to this, but let's understand first of all, and that is why the name politics is again important. Now let's understand its etymological roots. So in Latin, the word polis means cities. Okay. So politics is essentially concept of cities. Now to understand this properly, we have to understand how Aristotle kind of defined the whole evolution of society, and it has very lot of relevance to it. So Aristotle, who is famously known for, for being a father of political science, said society evolves in three stages. First stage is village, family. Let me just remove it. Okay, family. From there to village. From there to cities. And family, you don't like, every institution in this needs governance, right? Like, we also have to manage our things in family, but we don't need any formal setup, like, because we all live in proximity, we live with each other, and we kind of know about each other conditions without formal sense of monitoring. Let's say we are our family, we all dine together, and let's say in the afternoon my father didn't, or my mother did not eat well. I can simply say at dinner, you just eat lot of, take some more food, take two more chicken pieces, because you haven't eaten well in the afternoon. That's what we can say. Informally we can govern, that's what I want to say. Here informal governance is sufficient. And villages, they're also about kinships. Like in India we have caste system. Okay, in villages in India we have vadas, right? Vadas are all kinships, right? Like our relatives, our kins will be there. So even villages also, we can govern them informally, because ultimately we are all related. But that is not the case with cities. Cities are the places where we have to live with strangers. We don't know them. We can't know every person in the city, right? So city is here we have to live with strangers. Now, what is this strangers? Like living with strangers means, like, the idea of stranger is that you don't know what's happening with that person. It's not just, not because they are not related to you. It's not about building that relationship. You can't build after a certain point, right? If you're living with 2 crore, 3 crore, or India, we are living 150 crore people. How can you know everyone on a personal capacity? That's how they become strangers. So here a formal sense of governance is very important. So therefore the formal sense of monitoring is also very important, and only that reveals the real reality. Otherwise people live in subjectivity. Whatever happening with me, I think is happening with everyone. If I am living under the roof, I think everyone is living under the roof. I don't know the conditions of the others, in informal sense, through subjectivity. So everyone live in their own subjective world, and that is not reality. That is not complete reality. So complete reality can be only achieved with formal sense of monitoring. For that we need cadre who lives in the ground. They have to work day in day out to understand the reality. That is how, that the concept of public funding is that we have to give salaries to the cadres, therefore they can do formal sense of monitoring, and from there they also participate in policy making. But this is the idea behind public funding system, giving salaries to the cadre. See today, simply sitting in cities, if I sit in Hyderabad, or even in Delhi, and thinks all the education systems in the country is very good, that is not right, right? And even thinking everything is bad in simply sitting in city is not correct, because I don't know what is happening in the ground. If I sit in some in some place, it's simply I can't know it. So I always live in my own subjective reality world, or I always fall in for one narrative or the other. These things, you can never achieve that objective reality unless you have this public funding system, unless you have political cadre working in on the ground and monitoring in the first from the first hand. So this is the idea, and also one more let's decode one more concept: governance. See, the idea of governance, the etymological meaning of governance is steering a ship, you know, ship. See, and if you don't know what's happening, if you don't know reality, steering a ship is like that of, driving a steering a ship in darkness. And here, this data, what we are referring, this data brings daylight, and within daylight you can easily travel. That will that is the idea of that is the importance of data in democracy. And imagine if one person can, like, for me, if I can monitor and and bring the data of one institution, that is the labor of one person. And 10 people work in different, let's say if I have 5% votes, if our political party got 5%, 10 people will work in different fields. That is only one constituency. Imagine how much data we can bring across the states, across the country. Imagine the amount of data that we can build. And this data is very, very, very important. Now, some might say, okay, we can uh, ask for data through Right to Information Act, right? RTI is there. So what is this need of all this monitoring mechanism? But see, RTI can't really. There are drawbacks. First of all, retrieving data or monitoring through bureaucracy, always have drawbacks, because they ultimately have to serve their political masters. They don't have full autonomy, so that data is not reliable, and they don't have autonomy to do design their monitoring structures as well. They have to work with the government. But the idea of public funding system is that we are giving funds to all the parties, right? So winning parties get funds, losing parties, every party get fund. So everyone do monitoring. Therefore, truth will definitely come out, because this is called diversified epistemology. You know, so definitely truth will come out. There is no doubt about it. Simple. Let's say if a flower has blossomed in garden, and if a old person want to check out whether that flower has blossomed or not, and if he only relies on one person, if he ask me to check it out, I can simply pluck it and put in my pocket and say there is no flower. See, if there is only single source for the truth, then they can lie, and they cannot get caught because they are all the only source. But in public funding system, we have multiple players, and they all do participate in monitoring. So if one person lies, other person says truth, he got caught it, right? Even if one person says truth, everyone lies, truth will come out. So we only need one person to say truth, and that's how we can achieve truth in this diversified epistemology. So I have 100% belief that through this public funding system, we can bring out this truth. We can stand on the truth. We can stand on the data, and therefore we're going to achieve truth in the form of data. And from there, we can do policy making. And as I said, policy making, is what politics is all about. Once you understand the data, once you have the data, you understand like what is wrong with the data, what are the problems, and from there, you the cadre will write policies from the ground level, from the all level. Therefore, the decision making in the governance comes from everywhere. And this is how democracy should look like, right? Like governance should, the decision making should happen at every level, in the hierarchy. Today, only the top level leadership will take all the calls. They need that arbitrary power because they have to do wrong things in private funding system. But in public funding system, decision making will happen at everywhere, and everyone will write reports, policies, or to their superior layers in the hierarchy, and people on the top, they also have the role to play. Leadership is important, but the cadre will play the prominent role in public funding system. And one more thing, and this process, political parties, let's say one party won, normally these people will govern, right? But in public funding system, every party participate in all the process. This party do monitoring, this party do monitoring, this party do monitoring, this party do monitoring, and they also do policy making, everyone participates in policy making. And okay, ruling party will eventually pass their policies or laws in the assemblies or parliament, but until that point, until you know that point, everyone is equal, everyone participates in governance. Whether they are in opposition, whether they are in the ruling, everyone does this. And this exercise of doing governance on everyday basis, whether you are in opposition, whether you're in position, on top of it, you can critics, like for example, if this is a situation we got, these are the problem we got, this is our policy, and your policy is not good. And like that, we can have a constructive debate in democracy. And the people also understand, okay, if these people come into power, these are the policies they're going to bring. So through public funding system, we can bring a sense of predictability, a sense of scientific policy making in the democracy. And through this idea, we can achieve the real democracy. So therefore, I believe public funding system will bring the real democracy, that what we are dreaming for. And this public funding system will solve all the problems that are in the private funding system. Okay, now let's look how this public funding system can solve those problems. First of all, we said that in private funding system, oppression is necessity. Corruption, everyone has to do corruption, right? So in public funding system, you don't need to put single rupee as investment in politics. Once you're not putting your private money, there is no necessity to earn the money back, right? In fact, you're getting salary, so you can lead your life with that, and you're not putting your money, so you don't need to do corruption. So in public funding system, corruption won't be necessity, oppression won't be necessity. You can live with salary, and you can lead your life, and you can also work. There is no need to do the third bad thing. So yeah, so fundamentally, we can remove this necessity of doing corruption or oppression for monetary gain, which is a survival formula in private funding system. In public funding system, every single rupee that is spent in politics, which it will comes from state. So there is no need to do corruption in the first place. So there is no need to do oppression for survival. So that is the first thing we can achieve with public funding system. And second, we thought, if you spend 40 crores, 50 crores in private funding system in elections, once you lost the election, it's not just a defeat, it's more than that. You lost money, so it's suicidal, right? But in public funding system, you don't put any money, so you don't lose your private money, and your party will also survive, because we are saying funds will be proportional to the vote. So even if you lose in election, you will receive funds to the proportional to your votes. So your party will receive fund. First of all, your private money won't go, like you don't lose any private money, and on top of it, you will still receive funds proportional to your votes. Therefore, there is no suicidal nature to the public funding system. And this gives this gives huge positive ripples in politics, because if defeat is suicidal, politicians tries to win at any cost. It will becomes warlike situation. Therefore, we spoke about what are the problems. If victory is the only survival formula, but in this you can afford to lose. Using losing doesn't mean death. Defeat is not the end of the game. So you can still survive, you'll still get the funds proportion to your votes. So with that funds you can still work, right? Therefore, there will be no compulsions to win. Therefore, you will conduct betterly in politics. Once you don't have any compulsions, that that righteous nature, whatever the morals, whatever you name it, all those things will fall in place, slowly, because no, there won't be compulsions to do bad things. Therefore, good parties do survive, and people will opt betterly. So all these positive changes will occur, and the overall political atmosphere will incrementally change. And so this is what we can achieve. You can change the whole political atmosphere, the political conduct, the political speeches, everything, and the whole notion of politics will change for good in the public funding system. And it's not just about politicians alone. The people will also change a lot, because in private funding system, there will be this wastage of vote. You have to vote for a winning cause, so you have to compromise and vote for a bad party, though that is a bad party, because you have to vote for a winning cause. So people also will make a lot of compromises. But in public funding system, you can vote for that losing party, that small party, that good party, if you think, because even that small party will receive fund, right? So you don't do compromises in order, at the time of voting. You will vote whichever party you like, whichever party you seems, which is good. You don't need to do compromises. So if you vote for a good party, they'll get some fund, they will work, and next time other people also will look at their work, and they will start voting for it, and so it will incrementally grow. So there will be no concept of wastage of vote. There will be no compromises as well. So there will be no compulsions, there will be no compromises, and there will be no corruption. Therefore, we can end the oppression in politics through public funding system. And okay, we end oppression. What about inequality? That is also very important, right? First of all, we said that in private funding system, there will be huge inequality in terms of participation, right? Uh, like only people who have, like, let's say 40-50 crores, who afford to spend that much amount of money, have real chances of winning. But here in public funding system, leave about 40-50 crores. First of all, as we already said, not even a single private money is allowed to spend in politics. So that is not a criteria. But in return, you will receive salary for working in politics. And this salary system will democratize the participation aspect of politics and democracy, because everyone can walk into this politics once you have salary system, right? See, what is the average person's dream in this, what is our average dream? We have to study well, and we have to get a good job, so that we'll get good salary, so that we can lead our life, have a good livelihood. This is our average person's dream, right? Same thing will be in politics. So if you are a member of cadre, you will receive salary for working there, so that you can lead life. And once you have salary, all people, not just rich, middle class person can join in the cadre and work and get receive salary. Working class person can join in this cadre and work and receive salary. Everyone can participate, and there will be no bossism. See, if our private MLA candidates are giving money, their private money, we are we have to obey whatever they say, because they are giving their money end of the day. So we have to, it's like boss and employee relation. But in public funding system, the money is coming from the state. So there is no hierarchy in a strict sense. There will be leadership. There will, to coordinate cadre, to supervise work. All of these things are there, but there is no private hierarchy where you completely obey, and you will that the word we use, gulamgiri, right? Like the stooneness. There will be no stoonges in politics anymore with this public funding system. You'll get the autonomy, and people can take decisions at all level. So the whole participation aspect, the whole influence aspect, uh, change revolutionarily in public funding system. So this is going to reshape the politics if you think in that direction. And what about the voters? What about the funding aspect of commoners? So we already spoke how a billionaire like Ambani or Adani, they can give like 10,000 crores to one political party, and we maximum 10,000. So to equal their influence, we need crore people on other side. But you know, in public funding system, everyone has one vote, and every vote has one fund value, which means Ambani's or Adani's or any other billionaire influence of their influence on political parties equals to that of yours and mine. So here in public funding system, you take the richest person in this country and you put that person in one side of the common balance, and the other side, you don't need crore people, you don't need thousands of people, we just need one person. That person might be the last person, the poorest person. So this is the real equality, right? Everyone has to weigh equally, and that we can achieve this through public funding system. Can you imagine the amount of equality we can bring, like the amount of inequality we can destroy, and we can bring that actual equality in public funding system? See, universal adult franchise brought nominal equality now, I agree, but real equality comes with financial power that we have in public funding system. Through votes we can finance political parties. That is the real change we can, real, how can I say, the real change, not the surface level change. We can change the roots, of the current political order through public funding system. See, I've been working for a very long time. The only thing that makes me, brings me back to this idea to work again, because no, we can achieve these ideals like equality, political equality, liberty through this public funding system. And not just that, in a country like India, we have also other social oppressions, right? Like caste oppression, like religious persecution, like, religious differences, and also gender inequality is also there. And I will tell you quickly how public funding system can, will also address these problems as well. See, we are saying, like, in Bahujan politics, the major argument is that we don't have enough resources, to run the political party. That's why we don't have the power right now. Though we are many people, like we got the number of people on our side, but still we are lacking this power because we don't have resources to run a political party. In public funding system, those resources will come from the state. So the argument around the resources won't be won't be an obstacle. Like, our people have votes. So if we work well, they will vote for us. And if they vote, even like 5% vote for us, we can start working. And incrementally, if we work well, one day we'll reach into the power. We'll reach that power. So we can bring the true diversity in politics in that sense, and we can bring the diversity from the cadre level, and that diversity will organically grow towards the top level leadership. And I believe, public funding system will bring the political power. The master key is the public funding system, and once we achieve it, it will be easy. And to diversify the power, to break this monopoly on the power, and we can diversify so that people from all walks of life. See, in some communities, they don't have a demographic strength as well. Like they are very few. So they might not become, MLA or MP in the first case. But if you, in the cadre system, they can at least get into cadre in the first place. So from there, if they work well, they can, incrementally. First of all, they have their presence, presence with autonomy, and from there, everyone have equal chances to, go up in the hierarchy. And my idea is like, if at all this public funding system we can achieve it, I want to be cadre, in my hometown. I want to monitor any department like schools, hospitals, and I want to monitor, I want to collect the data, and I want to write policies in my home. And these policies will reach assemblies in parliament, and they can solve all the at least they will contribute, right? So the idea is to, like, decentralize the power. We can do that through public funding system. Now, what about the gender inequality? See, today, if you look at the current scenario, today we have few women representatives, right? But if you look at on the ground, the people who are actually running the political domain is, mostly male person, like whether this her father or her son or husband, brother, whoever the male, they actually run things on the ground. And and you know why? Because in private funding system, it demands certain behavior, like to do corruption. Let's say, imagine yourself that, I have to ask bribe from, let's say, a politician or any other industrialist. If I ask in a in a good with a good way, or like, with a polite manner, with a good demeanor, do you think the other person will feel afraid? We have to frighten them, and that requires masculinity, on a ground level. Therefore, this private funding system, which runs on, which thrives on crime, is inherently masculine. With public funding system, we change the whole grammar of politics, right? So it's about policy making, it's about collecting data, monitoring, and writing policies. This is everyone's job. Female women can do as much as policy making, the comparison to our, we so 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 this gender barriers will break through public funding system. I truly believe it. And lastly, what about religious hatred? How do we solve that? See see public funding system, if I have to boil down the public funding system to one word, that is labor, that we already spoke. Political labor. And imagine, let's say, I, or no, few people belongs to the dominant Hindu background, okay? And let's say there is this enmity between Hindus, at least, Muslims, they are looking at Muslims as a villains, right? And in some other areas, majority people might look at the other minority in same way. Okay, whatever. I'm just giving you some example. So if a Muslim person in a constituency, let's say he's a cadre, he opts education, and he is monitoring every school every day, like, like each school every day, and he's collecting this data, and drafting these policies, and day in day out. And let's say if he worked for 2-3 years, and he brought a lot of change, in the education system, therefore our children got benefited. Can we hate that person? See, in private funding system, politics is all about authority. So this authority brings hatred easily because it's unproductive job. But once a person do labor, you can't hate, because through labor we can produce love. And once in this presence of love, hatred won't survive. So this is what I've thought, like, thinking like through. So this public funding system is based on labor. Therefore, it will remove all these negative notions like jealousy, hatred, all these things, because people do labor, and for that we have respect, love, and this love eventually solves all the problems. And it's not a small project, right? See, we are talking about Indians or it can be applied all over the world, but let's just take Indians. How many people? See, in my ward there are 800 people. If something good happens, it itself is a great thing. Now, if something good happen in a village, 2-3,000 people, or let's say 10,000 people, it's also great. But imagine the scope. Let's say this much. Let's say if some good policy occurred and changed, road system in our district, like 10 lakh people will, or like 30, like 2-3 lakh people will get benefited. It's a constituency. Okay, 10 lakh people will get benefited in a district level. It's still this much. And in a state, 10 to 8 crore people will survive. And if you bring good policy changes in a state, that would be this much. And think about country, 150 crore people. Let's say if we improve the road conditions of a country, 150 people, it's going to benefit 150 crore people. And we're not just talking about one policy in one governing area. We're speaking about whole governance, whole area of governance. Can you imagine the amount of policies? Can you imagine the amount of data we can, get through this public funding system? Can you imagine the amount of policies we can make through this public funding system? It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. See, public funding system is going to solve every problem. We can solve every political problem. See, imagine yourself sitting, this big diner, in a big dining table with 150 crore people. And today, we have empty plates for many people. And people are starving, people are crying out of this oppression. And we can solve those things with this public funding system. I truly believe. See, I want to climb into that sky and shout that, this public funding system can achieve liberty. At least I want to shout through internet. Maybe people, I don't know how to spread this, but I want to spread this. Public funding system can solve every political problem. It is going to bring liberty. Liberty. See, Ambedkar said the three essentials of ideal society are equality, liberty, and fraternity. Sorry, the order is wrong. Like fraternity, liberty, and equality. And we can achieve liberty with this public funding system. I truly believe we can achieve it. And for that, we have to, choose. We have to choose. This is the current private funding system in which it is thriving on oppression. And this should be our alternative. This should be our choice. Public funding system will bring liberty.